Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today bringing you my Assassin's Creed Mirage review. Big shout out to Ubisoft for providing the review code about a week ahead of the embargo lifting, so I had enough time to go through this one and let the thoughts digest because it's not too long of a game. Now, Assassin's Creed Mirage is one where the hype is really built up because it's about returning to the roots of Assassin's Creed. I have many thoughts on it, but ultimately I was not in love with what Mirage brought to the table, and I'll explain why. So let's not delay any further. If you're new here and you're into the day one reviews, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. Let's start off with the story. You play as Basim, a character who should be familiar to those of you who have played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, as he's one of the main characters in that game that Eivor interacts with. That may beg the question, do you have to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla to appreciate Mirage? Now, Ubisoft will tell you no, but I disagree. It's always been like this. To appreciate Unity to its fullest, you have to beat Assassin's Creed Rogue. It helps. To soak in all that AC Origins story built, it helps to have some familiarity with the narratives of past games. Revelations can be played on its own, but you'll definitely want to play AC 1, 2, and Brotherhood to fully absorb all of Ezio and Altair's story. Anyway, you get the point. To fully appreciate everything that Mirage is doing here, it's in your best interest to at least know what happened in Valhalla, no matter what Ubisoft says. It's also worth being aware of the timeline here. This is about 800 years after AC Origins, 11 years before Valhalla, and around 300 prior to Assassin's Creed 1. Now, for those who are unintroduced to Basim, you haven't played Assassin's Creed in a while, or you skipped out on Valhalla, he is a former thief growing up in Baghdad who eventually joins the Hidden Ones. The trick with this game's narrative is playing off what you know about the main character. If you got to the end of Valhalla, then you know what I'm talking about. Now, the problem here is twofold. For starters, many people fizzled out of AC Valhalla because of fatigue that they felt from the game's bloated content structure. And I say that as someone who actually really liked the game, even if it's kind of like a controversial take nowadays. I thought that AC Valhalla was a very fun game to play. Was it a Assassin's Creed game? No, but as I put in the tagline of my review for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, this is a series that eventually traded in its identity for innovation, but now we're going back to the drawing board with Mirage. Still, even if what I just said doesn't apply and you actually completed Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the primary issue is Basim's character growth is incredibly stagnant and boasts some of the worst writing from Ubisoft yet. There are moments that could be used to build tension and elevate characters near Basim, but any opportunity that presents itself is thoroughly squandered. There's actually one point in the game where Basim links up with a character that he has some history with. Things aren't cool between these two, and they left on awful terms, so they're very much at complete odds with one another. They have this chance encounter, they meet up, and you're thinking, this is the start of where we're going to build some tension among characters, right? Wrong. They just do nothing but hug it out and say, hey man, no sweat. It's there I recognized, okay, any attempt to create some sort of suspense for this game's narrative is out the window. So the main meat of the story comes down to two areas. For starters, Basim and the Hidden Ones are hunting down members of an order. You will track down cases, which eventually provide clues to identify members hidden within this order and proceed to take them out to eventually get to the head of the entire order. So yeah, this may sound familiar if you played Assassin's Creed Odyssey. You know how they had this whole cultist system in that game? It pretty much takes that system and builds an entire game around it, where you're going to be scouring for clues in a mission-like structure, reading notes, talking to people, interrogating them, sneaking around, eavesdropping. We'll talk about more of that in the gameplay segment. And as you gain these clues, you'll find out who done it, who is that member of the order, and take them out. The other component of the story is that there is a spirit haunting Basim. This is probably the single most intriguing element of the story. However, the only caveat with it is, again, knowing AC Valhalla's story, a lot of the tension is lost here. And it doesn't help that those surrounding Basim are equally uninteresting and poorly written. But honestly, this may not matter to anyone. If you ask me what I prefer in this series, whether it be a really interesting main character or getting the setting right, I would go with the setting, because the setting defines what activities we're going to find in this world and even the rules of the gameplay, since they must adhere to a particular time period. I mean, we tolerated Jacob Fry in Syndicate to enjoy what may have been Ubisoft's most impressive effort yet in the series when it came to its world, parkour, combat, activities. I just feel the game, in hindsight, and I was very lukewarm on it, but I think it was underappreciated. So can Assassin's Creed Mirage rise above the narrative criticism? Let's talk about the gameplay. One of the big selling points for Assassin's Creed Mirage is the RPG elements that were injected into the series, beginning with Origins, are now being stripped out as the franchise aims to get back to its roots. No longer are you going to be level gated from assassinating some guard, as it instead registers as a critical hit. You just stab them and boom, they're dead. Fun times, right? So in the stretch from AC Origins to Valhalla, the series transformed from stealth assassination series into an action RPG franchise that took you to the more interesting points in human history. Getting back to the series' roots also means a more narrow focus for the franchise. While you could definitely spend a lot of time in the likes of AC2, Odyssey and Valhalla felt overindulgent in its breadth of content, walling you off from just beelining the story until you hit a particular level in the game. Less is more, and this is why the 360 PS3 era was goated, but that's a conversation for an entirely different video. If it wasn't obvious from what you've seen of the game thus far, Mirage uses Assassin's Creed 1 as its biggest touchstone, from its Middle East setting all the way to some of the mechanics that you see in the game, like the return of the notoriety system. They even have a filter for AC1 fans that puts that cool blue tone into the visuals. So yeah, heavy AC1 vibes here. Getting caught by guards means that you can actually rip down posters with your face on them, or even pay off people to start spreading the good word about you once more. Blending into crowds gets a major focus in this game, as there are stealth segments fully dependent on this mechanic, where it actually felt like a fresh change of pace as you hide in plain view rather than sticking to the shadows. Now, I didn't think using Assassin's Creed 1 as a touchstone meant to so literally imitate its greatest flaws too. I have a soft spot for AC1, no doubt about it. You know, the beginning of a fantastic series, even through its ups and downs. I love Assassin's Creed. But yeah, its open world activities were not the most engaging. Doing something like chasing down flags as a means of engaging the player in its parkour system was a boring activity, and while at the time tailing targets and eavesdropping was fun and fitting for the series, we've learned by this point that it drags the experience and feels quite repetitive. Well, Assassin's Creed Mirage brings all of those feelings straight back and leans really into that part of the series roots, which may be music to your ears, quite frankly. For me, I don't mind the tailing and eavesdropping. I kind of enjoy that, but it's the boring world activities that really drag things down. And that's not even accounting for unique problems it has on its own. The primary open world activity in Mirage are contracts that you're going to pick up at a hidden one bureau, where you may quickly assassinate a dude, or race someone, or steal something. You know, real basic stuff that's quick in and out content, but that's not even in the fun palate cleanser kind of way. It's just mundane, straight up. There are also what's called Tales of Baghdad, which serves more as short stories in the game. They're also, to me, not super compelling and pretty rare compared to what you find in the contracts. Otherwise, we're throwing things back to Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed 4, where Ubisoft's love of having you collect random things from feathers to animus fragments is the driving gameplay force here in Mirage. You're gonna do, get ready, really exciting stuff in AC Mirage. You ready for this one? You're gonna run to a historical site and you're gonna hold Y, and you're gonna get a codex entry. Oh yeah, that's right. Or you're going to pickpocket a citizen holding an artifact to trade into a store. Or you're going to pickpocket someone again, except this time they're going to be holding a mysterious shard. It is unbelievable to me, truly, wholeheartedly unbelievable to me, that we have gone from, and say what you will about these games, I will hear out all criticism throughout this entire franchise. I don't think any of these games are perfect. But to go from, say, the murder mysteries in AC Unity, the whodunit, investigating, questioning people, looking at evidence around the room, going from that, or the gang wars in Syndicate, these very personalized activities that were designed to fit the setting, to this isn't what people meant by going back to the roots of Assassin's Creed by any means at all. When we said go back to the roots, it meant the very simple thing I said at the top. Can I assassinate anybody? Do I have to be a specific level? No? Great. We're back to the roots because anyone can die by the hidden blade now. That was all there was to it. But they went into the direction of side activity mirroring the original in its mundane nature, and it drives me up a wall because this could have been so much more personalized, so much better, but it's passionately boring. I can't even call it busy work because you're not even busy. You're literally just running from point A to point B. It's not bad, as I said, just boring, which is oftentimes way worse. Now, the core gameplay of Assassin's Creed Mirage is fine on a mechanical level, but the design fails it, as I'm going to break down here. You'll crawl through fairly tight levels, whistling down guards and plucking them into haystacks as you veer closer to your ultimate target. This is simple, good old Assassin's Creed, right? No. There is a new token system in the game, which is a currency you get from completing the aforementioned side activities or just pickpocketing them from random NPCs. You can spend these tokens on 3 groups of people to have them do your bidding during missions, such as convincing your group of mercenaries to attack some guards to give you a clear entrance into a location, since the guards will now be quite preoccupied. Upon gaining entry, you'll be met with what may feel like some of the worst level design you've seen this year, but it's actually a much bigger problem in my eyes. As I said, the areas in this game are tighter, lacking much in the way of open doors or windows to crawl through, so there's not much interiors to break things up, so you're on the outside constantly, and this crams you down very specific paths, and in many instances, these locations are also bloated to the brim with guards. So what's going to happen before you tell me skill issue? Things are going to end up one of 2 ways, all right? Get ready for it. Number 1, you'll either cheese the assassination of half a dozen guards in the same wagon as you watch the AI break before your eyes, which I don't think is very fun, or you're going to get caught and are forced to engage in the game's combat system. Now, combat in AC Mirage is serviceable, I would call it. You have a heavy attack, a light attack with parry and dodging being used to defend yourself, depending on what color the enemy glows. If it's red, get out of the way and dodge, and if it's a bright light, then go ahead and parry, and you can insta-kill enemies that you parry with proper timing. There isn't much in the way of a warm-up animation to give you time to react, and so it's a far cry, pardon the pun, away from the days of auto counter-killing everyone like we used to up until Assassin's Creed Origins. So yeah, this isn't the way to play the game, even with all the upgrades that you can get from the blacksmith. It's just not how the game wants you to play, which is fine because you're an assassin, right? But this is what I mean about the design failing the game. None of these components are poor on an individual level. They all work fine. But when the areas are too small and overpopulated and the combat is deliberately not fleshed out so that you are, as an assassin would be, more proficient in the shadows, it becomes a very vicious cycle of running away anytime you're caught or just breaking the game. And this doesn't account for like little design problems, such as mapping the assassination button to the attack button. So the amount of times I swung on someone that I didn't want to swing on because I wanted to just take them out, but then it engaged in combat, my notoriety went up, and then guards were chasing me, I had to hide. It's almost too reminiscent of the bad parts of core AC games. It feels like it's blowing those ones up out of proportion and not focusing on what made the series special, but it all comes back down to design. It's fine if the levels are much smaller and have less exploration. It's fine if you want to pack a particular area full of guards. It's fine if you want Basim to not be this character that's super proficient in combat and you could only take on 3 guards at a time. That's all fine individually, but when you put them together is when the problems really start to roll in. Now, one of the better additions to locations that you'll infiltrate in this game is a marksman that'll shoot down your eagle companion, so you can't tag an entire location of enemies and crawl through without really thinking at all. It actually gave me this goal of, okay, I need to find the marksman, take him out, and then I'll start surveying the area. It forces you to go in blind. It forces some discomfort, which again can fuel those design issues I'm talking about. But when it works, you can see the vision, you can see the intent and what they were trying to avoid, which is what we did in so many Assassin's Creed games. Throw the bird up in the sky, ping, 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 ping. Okay, I know where everybody is. I'm going to take them all out and then just run around this area like it's nobody's business. Fortunately, you do have some useful tools in these locations to use, from throwing knives to teleporting to assassinate multiple enemies at once, although you don't get all of this immediately. Progression is tied to certain story beats rather than XP, where you'll unlock tool upgrades alongside skills within a skill tree. Now, there are 3 skill trees here, and the upgrades in some instances are valuable, but in others, it just exists to give you some sort of feeling of progression, which this game is severely lacking. Like, your whole predator tree involving your eagle is like, hey, you can ping targets. Now you can ping targets a little quicker. I'm like, that's a worthless upgrade, man. They're taking little slivers of the game and divvying them up even further into breadcrumbs and just dripping them throughout an artificial skill system here. There are useful ones like, oh, chain assassination, great. I love that. But much like what I think Core AC did really well is giving you tools or doing missions to unlock these upgrades instead of throwing them into a skill tree. I've said this many times before, this isn't just an Assassin's Creed problem, it isn't just a Ubisoft problem. We don't need skill trees in every single game. Now, there are moments that these tools are used in really cool ways, especially the teleport ability, letting you sometimes access areas you otherwise shouldn't have been able to just due to a guard's placement where you'll assassinate him and suddenly you're on top of a tower. That type of stuff is where you see the open-ended gameplay and how the tools could flourish if we expanded the power set a little bit more, which is something I just, at my heart, I don't feel fits AC well, or these random abilities that are starting to show up. But it just goes to show that opening up that tool set more, opening up the levels more, could have made all the difference in this game. You can upgrade these tools with materials gathered from contracts that I mentioned before, or chests in the open world. Each piece of gear has 3 tiers that have unique upgrades, which you can only select one of per tier. So if I have a throwing knife and I unlock the tier 1 upgrade, you can only select one of the 3 upgrade options available there. It's not like you bring more materials in there. All of those upgrades are available, but you can only equip one. I actually like this system a lot, especially because the throwing knives eventually can make your enemies dissolve as an option, or you can kill heavy armored enemies. That is a really good sort of gameplay choice there, because both of those are incredibly useful. You can take anyone out quietly and no one's going to know they were ever there, or you can take anyone out whatsoever, but the bodies are going to be there and you may alert the guards. I found the dissolving more worthwhile, but you may find that taking out heavy enemies is much more worthwhile to you. So again, like, there are these moments of, I see the options and I like what you're doing here, and the tool upgrades are one of those bright spots. That said, and this is just me being very much a critic here, I do think the tools were handled this way with the very light upgrades strictly because the game doesn't have anything else to evolve what the Mirage experience is. These tools, from traps to blow darts, could have easily been handed off very early to you, with more noteworthy improvements down the stretch to the gameplay experience like I had mentioned, but it does very little beyond what you've already seen of the game, which leads to a stagnant main character and a stagnant gameplay experience that can oftentimes get frustrating. There is a lot of OG AC energy here, and I do think this game will speak to a lot of people. It's not very long. You can beat it in easily 20 hours. You can walk away from it. But I'm not trying to be a prisoner of the moment and review this not only as like, hey, it's a competitive month in October now, but down the line. I do think AC Mirage falls into the wait for a sale category. Not just because there are going to be a lot of options right now in October, and I don't think this one put up a competitive enough product where I can say to you, go get this day one, even if you're the most hardcore AC fan, truthfully. Look, I love this series, but this one just wasn't fully speaking to me in a lot of ways. But it's also down the line, if you were to get this at $30 and pick it up maybe at the top of next year or even during Black Friday, I mean, that is a really good deal, and I think you would enjoy the game much, much more at that price tag and kind of accept its flaws much, much more. At a discounted price, I could see this one speaking to people more, and maybe that's because it started off originally as an Assassin's Creed Valhalla expansion before being turned into a fully priced video game. So you can feel some of that energy within it as well. Still, it's nice to see that Ubisoft is slimming the focus down more. That was 100% necessary, and you can see bright spots within this. I just think the vision needs refinement, and I also think the game, in my eyes, may have required more testing because I felt like the design issues became pretty immediately apparent and frustrating. We'll see what other reviewers are saying out there. As always, I encourage you to check out what other people are saying. I'm looking forward to seeing the reception of this game because I don't know if this is going to be all over the place, but otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, looking forward to seeing your thoughts on AC Mirage. Despite what I've said and what other reviewers have said, are you picking it up? Are you skipping? Let me know down below. Looking forward to seeing your thoughts. And with that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the heck out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.